Good afternoon, Bassett community. My name is Dr. Alejandro Alvarez, and I'm the superintendent for Bassett Unified School District. I want to thank all of you for taking your time out of your day and your evening to join us here for this meeting today. Let me begin first by apologizing for last Friday and the technical issues we had with Microsoft and being able to activate the meeting. However, fortunately, with 5 o'clock time, it looks like it worked out for more parents, so grateful for that. And on behalf of the Bassett Unified School District staff, the Board of Education, and myself, I want to welcome you to this meeting today. I know a lot of parents have questions about returning kids to school, about safety for their children, regarding the COVID-19 and protocol. So this is a meeting we scheduled to go over with you several things regarding our COVID prevention plan and COVID safety plan, and a little bit of information on returning children to school. So first, I'd like to introduce Tomiko Lee Nolasco. She's our Executive Director of Human Resources. I'm going to introduce her, and she will begin with introduction of some of the team that was consulted and dealt with as far as developing these plans. So Tomiko, I'm going to turn it over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Alvarez. Good evening, Bassett parents. Thank you for joining us this evening. I know as parents, we're very busy this time of evening. This is the time that we dedicate to our families. So I just want to extend a special thank you for joining us today. This is very important information that we need to share with our parents and our families and our community. I just want to share that our COVID-19 committee have worked very hard in establishing protocols. Our committee consists of our Executive Director of Business Services, Santa Rajiv, our Executive Director of Educational Services, Dr. Diana Kinart, our Director of Facilities and Maintenance and Operations, Don Lloyd, our Director of Special Education, Maureen Cottrell, and also who played a very critical piece in developing these protocols for the safety of our students is our new Director of Health Services, Ms. Deborah Martinez. And we've also welcomed input from our site administrators and principals as well. If we can begin our slideshow. So what I will be presenting on this evening is our COVID-19 safety plan and our protocols. These protocols have been established by the state of California under guidance from our Department of Public Health, our local California Department of Public Health, and our state Department of Public Health. Next slide, please. As Dr. Alvarez mentioned, tonight I'll be presenting on the COVID-19 prevention program and also our COVID-19 safety plan. And then at the end of our presentation, we will have questions and feedback for our parents, and we will be monitoring those questions in our Q&A. Next slide, please. So as you all are aware, and I'm sure everyone's been hearing on the news, the state of California has been diligently working legislatively and statewide to prepare for the safe reopening of our schools. What that means for our local districts is that we have been working to make sure that all of the protocols such as safety, return to classrooms, PPE, all of those protocols have to be in place before we can reopen our schools. We are also monitoring our local COVID-19 transmission information, which we rely on from our Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. So all of those components are key factors in determining whether we will reopen our schools and when we can reopen our schools. So resuming in-person instruction is critical for our students, our families, as well as our staff members that will be here to support our students. And we want to make sure that every safety measure is in place before we reopen our schools. And we are just about finished with that process. Next, I kind of lost the presentation. Next slide, please. So where are we? LA County is continuing to support a phased reopening of schools, beginning with students in grades PK through 6, as well as preschool. I lost our presentation. Schools may not reopen for in-person instruction in counties that have adjusted case rates above 25 per 100,000. So schools may reopen for in-person instruction in counties with adjusted case rates of less than 25 per 100,000. And we must be in that tier for 5 consecutive days. For grades TK and 6 and preschool. And in order for schools to reopen, we must complete a COVID safety plan, and we must post those plans to our website prior to reopening. So as of February 23rd, 2021, LA County has dropped down to an adjusted case rate of 12.3 per 100,000. So that means that we have been able to meet the purple tier, which would allow us to reopen for grades TK through 6. And that is currently what we're preparing for as we bring our students back to school. We will be phasing in grades TK through 6 as well as our preschool. Next slide, please. Where are we? In preparation for school reopening, Bassett Unified School District has purchased the following PPE. We've purchased 65,000 masks for our students and staff members, gloves. We purchased 2,000 face shields. We purchased hand sanitizer dispensers, which will be installed in all of our classrooms and buildings. We have also installed and purchased thermal scanners and touchless thermometers. We have isolation gowns that will be available for positions that provide one-to-one services or that work directly in close contact with our students. We have plexiglass barriers for classrooms and workspaces. We also have purchased signage that you will see when you're coming onto our campuses or into any of our offices, which would communicate safe physical distancing as well as mask requirements. We've also purchased cleaning and disinfecting supplies to ensure that work areas and classroom spaces are cleaned and disinfected and sanitized on a frequent and regular basis. We've also purchased standalone air purifiers with HEPA filters that will be placed in all of our classrooms. And we've also purchased air filters for our HVAC system, which are the highest grade that will accommodate our current HVAC system. Next slide, please. So what is the criteria to reopen for in-person instruction? So as I stated previously, in order for schools to reopen, we must ensure that certain protocols and procedures are in place before we return our students to the classroom. Also, before reopening schools for in-person instruction, school districts must submit a COVID-19 safety plan and a COVID-19 checklist, which certifies that we have completed the components of the COVID-19 plan. The COVID-19 safety plan consists of 2 documents, the Cal OSHA COVID-19 prevention program and the COVID-19 school guidance checklist. These documents satisfy the requirements for safe reopening and are developed under the CDPH guidance. Plans must be submitted to the local health department and the state school safety team prior to reopening. So once our plans have been completed, we will be submitting those to the state. The state will review those plans, and then if there are no deficiencies, we will be notified that we are in the clear to reopen. Or rather, if we do not hear from them, we are in the clear to reopen. Districts are encouraged to consult with our labor partners, our parent and community organizations prior to posting and submitting our COVID-19 safety plan. On February 18th, we met and we shared our plan and consulted with our California School Employees Association. And on February 25th, we met with our Bassett Teachers Association and shared the COVID prevention plan with them. One of the key components for reopening is that schools must maintain stable groups and cohorts. This means that students may not mix with other groups of students or other classrooms, and they must remain with the same groups of students while they are in the classrooms learning. Another key component of the COVID safety plan is that face coverings are required for all students and staff, and we will be providing these the PPE to each of our students and staff. Next slide, please. One of the key components of the COVID-19 prevention program is to ensure that any hazards that are present in the workplace and/or classroom are immediately identified, evaluated, and corrected. So we will be conducting regular workplace evaluations and periodic inspections to ensure that our classrooms and workplace is safe as we continue to have students and staff members present in our classrooms. Employee participation will be is greatly encouraged. So if any of our employees are at work, or if they're working throughout the district, or they're within their classrooms, and they notice that maybe they've noticed there's folks are not wearing masks, or certain modifications haven't been made to allow for social distancing, we would like to encourage that our employees participate, identifying those, and notify management of those hazards. Another component is that we will be screening all of our employees per the CDPH guidelines. Employees will be also required to self-screen and are advised not to report to work or school sites if they have any COVID-19 symptoms, or if they've been exposed to any individual with COVID-19. Next slide, please. How will we control hazards within our workspace to ensure that students and staff are safe? We will ensure that physical distancing is allowed. So our classrooms, as well as our workspaces, have been configured to ensure that each of the desks and workspaces are 6 feet apart. Or if there's not if there is not a configuration that will allow for 6 feet apart, we will install barriers. We want to remind employees and students that when they are on site, that physical distancing must be adhered to. So this is not just when you're sitting and working, but also when you're walking throughout the classroom or on campus and in your work areas. Face coverings will be required at all times. This is a mandate of the reopening protocols, as well as guidance from the California Department of Public Health. The only times when face coverings are not required are when our employees are working alone in isolation in the work areas, or when individuals or students are eating alone in a room. Next slide, please. Engineering controls. Another component of our control of hazards is that, like I stated earlier, we have installed barriers in our workspaces, as well as each of our student desks will have barriers, plexiglass barriers installed on the desk. We've upgraded our air filters. We've also purchased air purifiers with HEPA filtration systems, and these will be placed in each of our classrooms. We've purchased equipment, they're called aerosol backpack sprayers. So this will allow our custodial and maintenance staff to expedite cleaning processes, where they will go in and sanitize with a sprayer each day, all of the classrooms and workspaces. We want to make sure that there's regular sanitization of equipment. Some examples of shared equipment is like our copy machines. We will be cleaning areas that are frequently used throughout the day. And we are encouraging that employees do not share PPE or any equipment. Their own personal workspaces or computers should be limited to their use, their individual use only. Next slide, please. Hand washing and sanitizing. So we do encourage frequent hand washing. Employees are encouraged to wash their hands frequently for at least 20 seconds throughout the day. And our supervisors and managers and principals have been advised to allow employees time throughout the day to allow them to frequently wash their hands. Hand sanitizers and dispensers have been placed in common workspaces, including reception areas, outside of restrooms, and there are also individual hand sanitizer bottles that we purchase for our employees to keep at their individual personal workspaces. We will also be installing hand sanitizer dispensers in each of the classrooms for available for student use as well. Those will be placed in classrooms that do not have sinks for students to wash their hands. PPE will also be used to control employees' exposure to COVID-19. As I mentioned earlier, staff members will be provided with gloves, gowns, face shields with drapes, and those will be provided as needed. We foresee that some of our specialists and teacher positions that will require more closer contact with students, we will have face shields available for them to use in those circumstances. Next slide, please. Another key component of the COVID-19 prevention program, also known as contact tracing, is investigating and responding to COVID-19. An Appendix C of our COVID-19 prevention program, which will be posted on our website at a later date, is investigating COVID-19 cases. This involves identifying any exposure at a worksite or school. If an employee notifies that they are positive for COVID-19, or if they are exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19, we will immediately isolate those individuals and begin investigating those contact tracing, where we may need to, making the determination of if we may need to identify other close contacts that they may have been in contact with, and isolating and quarantining those individuals as well. We will also be offering COVID-19 testing in the event that there is any exposure in the classroom. The frequency of testing will depend upon if there is an outbreak within a classroom or work area. And we will also be conducting random surveillance testing, which the state has recommended that school districts that are in a certain tier, purple tier, they've recommended that we provide random ongoing surveillance testing at least once weekly or bi-weekly. So we will be also working with our state to provide COVID-19 testing. We want to make sure that we're constantly communicating with our employees and our parents. So any information that needs to be sent out about possible exposure, parents will be immediately notified through our communication methods with parents, and employees will also be immediately notified in the event of an exposure via email or telephone. Training and instruction. Staff have received COVID-19 training prior to the beginning, or at the beginning of the school year. All of our staff have been trained on COVID-19 infection, prevention, hand washing methods, any aspect of COVID-19. And we will also continue to train our staff on any ongoing training that may be needed. Students will also be trained by their teachers once they return to school. They'll be shown, proper physical distancing, how to keep their masks on, how to wash their hands. Students will receive training by their teachers. Next slide, please. As I stated earlier, isolation and quarantine of close contacts will be required. Per LADPH guidelines, all COVID-19 cases and close contacts will be excluded from the school and the workplace. So if a student should come to school and notify us, and we receive information later on that the student may have been exposed to COVID-19, or if they have symptoms that mimic COVID-19, we will isolate the student until their parents are able to pick them up. We do recommend that students are tested, and as well as our employees. And then, as I stated earlier, if this is an incident where we have an exposure in the classroom or in the workplace, we will provide testing by this district. We also have an exposure management plan, which has been developed under the guidelines of the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. This exposure management plan is part of our part of our injury and illness plan, as well as our school exposure management plan. Those documents will also be posted on our website, and the district will strictly adhere to any isolation and quarantine guidelines with regard to isolation. So anyone that has been exposed to COVID-19 will be required to quarantine for 10 days and or 14 days. Per the LADPH guidelines, the district is required to report any cases of COVID-19, and that is with cases within students or employees. We are also required to report any close contacts, and we will be monitoring any close contacts of a COVID-19 case to follow up to ensure that the close contact does not themselves develop COVID-19. In the event that a close contact does develop COVID-19, we would be required to report that information to the Department of Public Health. The reports are submitted through an online reporting system, in which case the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health will generally reach out to individuals who have reported positive and advise them of any quarantine or isolation orders that may be currently in place by the health officer. Return to work criteria. Once employees and/or students are quarantined, they will be provided with guidelines on when it is safe to return and the date for which they may return. Again, generally these isolation or quarantine periods are from 10 to 14 days. However, that will be also dependent on any symptoms. Students and employees must be clear of all symptoms. They cannot be, they have to be without a fever for at least 24 hours and free of any other symptoms before they would be cleared to return. Next slide, please. And so that is the conclusion of our presentation. Are there any questions? Dr. Alvarez, I believe this is our time for Q&A.
Well, there's some questions in there. We will come back to the Q&A after mine because some of them will be answered in my presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want? So if you can bring up my presentation, please. Thank you. And thank you again, Mr. Nolasco, for the presentation. So what's going to happen is after this meeting, by tomorrow morning, we're going to post on our district's website and every school site's website and send out through social media the links to our COVID protection plan or prevention plan and the COVID safety plan that will be submitted to the Department of Public Health. We're going to take some information that we've shared with and gotten feedback from our different union staff, as well as after this meeting, and see if anything else can be incorporated, and then we'll be submitting it to the Department of Public Health. So I know a lot of you have questions about returning students to the Bassett Unified School District, and so I'm going to go over a presentation and provide you as much information that we can at this time. And please understand that things constantly change from the Los Angeles County Office of Education, from the Department of Public Health, from the state, as far as what they're requiring school districts to do to bring children back. Just most recently, the governor and the legislators are finalizing a deal between them of funding for school districts to bring students back, to be monies to be used to pay for the additional costs related to the PPE and extra funds for learning loss mitigation. So with that, if we can go to the next slide, I want to first begin with vaccinations for Los Angeles County. Many of you have been hearing about vaccines rolling out. They've been going out for about over a month now, and how each county has prioritized who gets the vaccine first. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Los Angeles County. So the state of California and all the counties, they've prioritized the vaccine, who gets it first. They've been focused on essential workers. They've been focused on the elderly based on age. And for the Los Angeles County, they're ready to begin their next phase of vaccine distribution this month, so starting today. So March 1st, the educators and education staff, they can begin registering for COVID-19 vaccines in the Los Angeles County. So if you're an educator or you work for a school district, you can begin getting your vaccine now. You have to get online, schedule an appointment, and they will take you. With that, you don't have to live in the county to receive the vaccine. You just have to be an educator or work for a school district in the Los Angeles County, and you would be eligible for the vaccine. Recently, the County Board of Supervisors, they have allowed for setting aside some of those vaccines that have been rolled out to the state and that the state has rolled out to the counties. And they've allowed some of it to be set aside, a percentage of it specifically to go to school districts. So besides the county being able to give those out, they've also said, for each school district, you get so many based on your staffing, and these are specifically for school districts. So above and beyond the opportunity to register with the county for vaccines, school district staff can also get a vaccine through the school district. And just for everyone's information, at this point in time, there has not been a vaccine that's been approved for ages below 16, and specifically the Moderna vaccine, and that one's only for ages 18 and older. So at this point in time, there really is no vaccine for children. Next slide, please. So for the school district, Bassett Unified, we have partnered with the Greater El Monte Community Hospital, and they are responsible for administering the vaccines that the county will be giving us for our staff. So each week, the school district is going to be allocated a specific number of vaccines for our staff. For example, for this week, the district was allocated 100. So the vaccine, staff vaccination will be prioritized based on staff who will be interacting with students more often. Priority will be given to site staff, focus on lower grade teachers first, and as additional vaccines are received, additional staff will be scheduled for the vaccination. And unfortunately, the county can't guarantee that we'll get 100 vaccines or the same number each week. So there is really, unfortunately, no time limit when we'll be able to vaccinate all our staff here at the Bassett Unified School District. And we've been encouraging over the past month and a half, and including this month, for staff, if they are able to get their vaccine from other places outside the school district and a partnership with the community hospital, we encourage you to do so. If not, the district will be going through a priority process on scheduling appointments for staff to get the vaccine. So can we go to the next slide, please? So the question is now returning students to school. So as Emil mentioned, current infection rates in Los Angeles County, they're allowing for students to return to school, preschool through 6th grade. And when I say that, it doesn't mean students all are able to come back through the normal process of what we've known to be a regular instruction before the pandemic. So the remaining grades at this time cannot return for instruction in class. And I know that some other school districts have students there, but they're not really returning for instruction. It's through a different model of really more intervention and focusing on particular students. In order for secondary schools to come back, the rates have to drop to 7 per 100,000 for 2 consecutive weeks, which really means going into the red tier rate, as was mentioned earlier by Ms. Nolasco. The COVID-19 safety plan must be submitted to the Department of Public Health for Los Angeles County, which was mentioned as well. And then once the school districts submit those, the Department of Public Health has 7 days to review the plan and provide any response, suggestions, questions, or anything like that. If the Department of Public Health does not respond within 7 days, school districts can move forward with bringing students to school based on the plan and which grade levels are eligible to return. The district plans to submit its COVID safety plan sometime this week for review by the Department of Public Health. So that's just another step in the process to be able to return students to school. Can we go to the next slide, please? As mentioned earlier, the district has purchased all the required safety equipment needed for students to be on site, and all that is also found within our plans. The equipment has been distributed to all the school sites, and then we will begin visiting the school sites and inspect them to make sure the equipment has been distributed to all the classrooms and all the different necessary facilities on campus. We want to ensure that all the equipment is working properly and the staff has been trained on their use. And this is important to us because the student and the safety of our staff is our #1 priority, is the Board of Education's priority, the superintendent, and the district. Next slide. So what will school look like? You know, the way the students arrive to school, how they interact with each other, they talk, they get close, and how they leave school, it's going to be completely different than what they're used to. And this is whether it be a preschool student, elementary school student, middle school, or high school, it will look different. Classrooms will have limited seating based on 6 feet of separation between desks and no less than 4 feet with desk shields. So right now, the county, the Department of Public Health is saying you can have as many kids in the classroom as you want, but they have to be 6 feet apart or no less than 4 if you have a shield or a barrier between those students' desks. So a classroom may vary depending on the size, the number of students it has. As mentioned earlier, the students will be screened daily for COVID-19 symptoms and temperature checks. Any student demonstrating any of the symptoms or with a fever will be sent home. And then, as mentioned earlier as well, there will be weekly random COVID-19 testings may occur depending on the tier rate the county is in. And once again, that was mentioned earlier, whether the county's in a purple tier, which so many infections rate per 100,000, or a red tier rate. We can go to the next slide. Students returning to school. The district is dedicated to returning students to school as soon as safely possible. Our goal is to do it, once again, as soon as possible, as long as we ensure everything is ready to go at the school sites. Ideally, we're hoping and we're shooting for the end of March. Once again, there's still some things that we need to finalize. Students will be offered an option of remaining on distance learning. Daily instruction may change for current model. So those that are giving, all our students that are distance learning right now, once we start to begin to return students back to class, the online model for those parents who will choose to maintain distance learning for their children will or may look slightly different. Students returning to school will follow a different schedule than before the pandemic. And the district is currently in negotiations with the teachers union on a schedule called hybrid that students will follow when returning, as well as continuing distance learning model. And really a hybrid schedule places students into different groups, with each group attending school at different times. We cannot have at this time all the students returning at the same time in school or in the classroom. We have to have some type of model that limits the number of students on campus. And this model, the schedule could have students attending half a day of school a few times a week. Within the COVID prevention plan and the COVID safety plan, there are some sample model schedules that could occur. Once that is finalized, we will share with the parents as soon as possible. And that's kind of where we are right now with returning students back to school. There is a Q&A on here that if you'd like to tie up your questions, we will answer them. Actually, we'll try going through them now and try to answer some out loud. If the questions aren't answered right now, we will definitely be posting them online. We'll be posting a frequently asked question on the district's website for parents to review based on the questions answered here. And we will also try to answer all questions after that. Once again, the district will be placing the COVID-19 prevention plan and the COVID-19 safety plan on the district's website for parents and community to go through. Once the plan is finalized over the next few days, we will be submitting it to the Department of Public Health for the Los Angeles County for them to review it. Once again, there's a 7-day window for them to review it. And then we're working on finalizing the schedule for returning students to the classroom. The district is working with our teachers union on finalizing that schedule. So with that, thank you. We can go to some of the questions that have been asked, and I'll see if we've answered them yet. The Spanish translation will also be on the website for this meeting. We will also be a question about the presentation. For those who were unable to see it, we will be placing the presentations on the website by tomorrow as well. Kind of trying to find some of the questions. There's a question that says, who will be sanitizing the classrooms between classes? Is there a plan for that? Students, teachers, janitors? So every classroom will be provided with a spray for sanitizing paper towels, but it will not be the responsibility of the teacher or the students to sanitize the classroom. That will be the responsibility of our custodial staff. Question about how will students stay in the same cohort when they are in middle school or high school? Once again, as I mentioned, returning to school, even at the secondary level when we're able to, will not look the same. It may be that students only attend partial day, because one of the things for the secondary is we can't mix students into more than 2 groups. So if for one first period there's a particular class of students together, and then they go to another class for second period, they can't mingle in with the third class. So that schedule is also being worked out. Once we were able to bring back secondaries, so there are going to be some of the limitations when we're bringing back secondary students. The middle school might be a little different because they are clustered, and they usually stay in their classroom with the same students for several periods. How many students will be in the classroom at any given time? Once again, that depends on the class size, which will dictate how many students we can get there while meeting the Department of Public Health requirements of no more than 6 feet apart, or no less than 6 feet apart, or no less than 4, as long as you have a barrier shield between the students' desks. Question about everyone goes to lunch at the same time. Yes, before the pandemic, everyone was going to lunch at the same time. Lunch is being available or offered. If kids are here for more than half a day, then lunch will be provided, and it would have to be a staggered schedule. So not all students are sitting together at the same time having lunch. We would still have to maintain the 6 feet of separation between students. And as a reminder, we will not have all the students on campus, so the staggered lunch schedule will work. There's a question about what about PE lockers? So that's being worked out with, once again, with the secondary schedule of whether or not PE will be made available based on students not being able to be with more than 2 groups during the day. There is a question, what will happen if parents, staff chooses not to be vaccinated but wants to return to class work? First of all, we can't enforce parents' vaccination. That's a choice they'll have to have. As far as staff, right now, because we are limited in, well, not we, but the entire state and country, there's only so many vaccines available out there. So at this point in time, it's unrealistic to mandate vaccination, just due to the fact that there is not enough for everyone. And it's going to be a process of going through a vaccination list and trying to get everyone vaccinated, but it will take a while. Question, is this only for K-6 or preschool as well? This would also include preschool, as I mentioned, with the rates dropping below 25 per 100,000, that the students that are eligible to return now, it also includes preschool. Question, and I'm sorry if I go a little slow, I'm trying to monitor the comments. Will the random testing be covered by school or out-of-pocket expense? The random testing will be paid for by the district. The district is partnering with an agency, Valencia Labs. That's through the Los Angeles County Office of Education, has set up an agreement with them to serve various school districts throughout the county. That agency, the Valencia Labs, will provide the COVID-19 testing. They will actually work with employees' insurances to bill the insurances for students that may have need the COVID-19 testing. If they have some type of medical coverage, it will bill that provider. If not, the district will cover the vaccination. I've answered this question, but I'm going to answer it again. Can students opt out to come back to school? Can students still do distance learning if school reopens? As I mentioned earlier, once we start bringing back students to in-class instruction, the distance learning model will still be available to those who do not feel comfortable or willing to come back at this point in time for this school year. However, the distance learning model lessons, instruction online, will look different. At whose expense will children be tested? Answer that one. Did I say a date of when are they going back? Students, I mentioned the goal for the district is really try to bring them back no later than the end of March. Once again, we have to turn in our plan to the Department of Public Health. We're doing a walk-through inspection of all our schools to make sure everything we've distributed have actually gone to the classrooms and set up and working properly, everyone's trained. And then finally, the district is working through the negotiation process with our teachers union on the schedule. The slides will be available for the parents. This question for Ms. Nolasco, I'd like you to answer this question, please. It says, if one student is experiencing COVID symptoms, will the entire class be in quarantine?
So part of the, thank you, Dr. Alvarez. When we will be sending out information similar to the way we inform our employees. Parents will be tasked with ensuring that they are not sending their child to school with symptoms. This is the first step of ensuring that infection does not reach our classroom. So, you know, it's just similar to when during the regular school year when your child is sick or if they have a fever, you know, you would want to keep them home. The same would apply during the COVID-19 pandemic. If your child has a fever, has a runny nose, and is coughing, now more than ever, it's, you know, we would assume that they are could have COVID-19. So we would be advising parents, or parents are going to be advised not to send their children to school. Employees are also advised not to report to work. Teachers are advised not to report to work if they are presenting these symptoms. Additionally, once they get to school, they will be screened and temperature checks will be conducted. So if a child doesn't screen, you know, if they don't screen because they have a low grade, you know, a temperature over 100.4, those, as I stated in my presentation, that child would be escorted to an isolation area and supervised until we can get contact with a parent or emergency contact, come pick the child up. But it is our hope that you know, parents would not be sending their children to school sick.
Thank you. And a question, is this presentation being recorded? Yes, it is, and it will be available. Several questions regarding what the schedule will look like when we return students back. Once again, that schedule is being worked through with the Teachers Association on a schedule for students to return, hours, depending on how that schedule works, whether it's a half day for students in class and a half day from home. All that's being finalized, so I wish I could provide you more information, but at this time, I do not have that. Several questions have already been answered. How can we ensure or enforce that parents do not send their children to school sick if they have no means of care? There's no we can't ensure that. We leave it up to parents when they send their children, especially during the pandemic, to proceed with the utmost caution and consideration for everyone else at the school site and in the classroom. So if your children have any of the symptoms or have a fever, we ask that you do not bring them to school. Question about how will the school have the students make up work or class time if they have to isolate or quarantine? Once again, depending on the model, for those that are being offered distance learning, they would be incorporated into those type of classes or they continue with their instruction. What if we do not want our child vaccinated? As I mentioned earlier, there is no vaccine for children right now, so there's nothing that the school district can do regarding vaccination for children. Question about whether or not it makes sense to bring back children with only 3 months of school. I would say it makes a lot of sense, especially if you're a parent who's been struggling for the last year with their child at home. I would say it makes a lot of sense to bring as many back as possible. Do we have desk shields for the desk? Yes, the district has purchased desk shields. How many students fit in one classroom? What we've been looking at, or what's been on average, when you go off of 6 feet apart, it ranges anywhere from 12 all the way up to 16, 17. It just depends on the size of the classroom. Question, how we're turning the class to help those that need after school care for student staff. One of the things that have been discussed with the Los Angeles County Office of Education and Department of Public Health is whether or not school districts can go back to offering the after school program ACES. So we're trying to get clarification of whether or not that can start up again at schools. And as soon as we get answers to that, we will provide it to the parents in the community. Does this plan include special education, primary, who may struggle with masks? This does include special education. When are you turning the plans to the county? Our goal is within the next few days. Once again, we've met with each bargaining unit or each union group within the district. And based on questions and comments today, we'll kind of go over the plan one more time, see if anything else needs to be incorporated, and turn it in by this week. For parents with multiple children in the school, we will be having the same schedule to make it easier for the parents. One of the things as we've been working with the principals as having to put students in 2 different groups, we had asked to make sure that if there's a family of 4 at the elementary level, if there's a kindergartner that puts in group A, the rest of the family should be put in group A as well, so they're at school at the same time. Has there been discussion about summer school to try to make up for the year lost? There definitely is, and we will be having summer school. Once again, depending on what's going on with the Department of Public Health, whether it's being done live in class with students and teacher or distance learning. At this point in time, we have no clear direction, but if things keep moving the way they are, more than likely it will be in class. Will we be able to see the final setup of classrooms? One of the things we've been working on and started talking to the school sites is we would like them to develop a video for the parents of kind of what a day would look like for a kids coming to the first day of school, so that parents can see that, a video of going through the classrooms and all that. So we will work with the school sites with it. A lot of these questions I've already answered. Once again, we will put these questions and answers online on the district's website under frequently asked questions. There's a question about air conditioners and ventilation, and that's one of the big discussions right now under the Department of Public Health, from the federal government all the way down. And so one of the things that maybe would be good if I share with everyone is all the air conditioning or HVACs, heat, ventilation, and air conditionings in the district, they're all mandated by law to have a certain percentage of airflow come in from outside. So it's not like it's just circling the same air from one room to the other and going through a filter. There's also a percentage of air, once again, mandated by law to flow in from outside into the classroom. So, you know, the teachers will have the option, I believe, if they don't already, to kick the vent on, and if they want to keep it flowing more, to have that access. Sorry, going through these questions, a lot of them are repeated. About preschool classrooms, and are the rooms equipped with the ventilation and same protocols like the elementary? Yes, they are, and they will, as far as getting the same type of hand sanitizing stations, as well as we ordered air purifiers for every classroom, as mentioned earlier. What about the water fountains? The district over the last month of February has been replacing a lot of the drinking fountains on campus to touchless ones. So that project is scheduled to actually end this week. So that's something that's changed when we come back. What about lunch? The Department of Public Health is really wanting lunch to occur outside as much as possible and not in the multi-purpose room cafeteria. Question about elementary school sites that have 7th and 8th grade. Will they be able to return? Right now, the only ones that are able to return in classroom instruction is the T-Care preschool through 6th grade. Next question, Ms. Martinez, maybe you can answer this. What type of random testing will be done, the nasal swab or the mouth?
Thank you, Dr. Alvarez. I appreciate this. Right now, the testing that's going to be done will be the nasal swab, and the nasal swab that's implemented right now is just going roughly a ½ inch into the nares. It's not like the one at the hospital. Let's see. Will parents be able to bring kids in for speech therapy? That is our goal as far as returning students to class, especially the ones that are here. The goal is to begin to receive their special education services in person as well. There are some limitations on them being one-on-one instead of small group. Once again, the whole focus would be not to mix students from one group to another. What will the district be doing to handle the emotional effect of all that has affected them? Just as a reminder, every elementary school does have a counselor assigned to them, as well as the high school, middle school. We've had some, maybe Ms. Nolasco, you can talk about the 2 additional staff members we have over at special education that's working with mental health services as well. And recently, the district has approved a contract with some mental health services that will be offered to our students and actually our employees as well online.
Yes, that's correct. We currently have 2 licensed marriage and family therapists. Mr. Edgar Ontiveros is the lead of that program that provides those services to our special education students. And we are looking currently to set up additional support for our students by working with some of our universities on, students that are working with mental health services. We're looking to set up partnerships with some of those universities to be able to come in and provide additional services for our students.
If only a certain amount of students are going to be back to the classroom, what dictates which children will get priority? Every child will get priority. That's a
main purpose of why students need to be put into different groups, and those choosing to come back to in class will have the same number of instruction what's in class as the others. And once again, that'll be dictated by the schedule that will be finalized as the district negotiates it with the teachers union. Will all students be strictly social distance even if the same groups of students at all times? Yes, during the entire time, the social distancing must continue the entire time on campus. Question about whether special education students and if they struggle to keep their mask on. That's something that I'm going to refer those individual cases to the special education department. Maybe an IEP needs to be held to address how that can be supported. Will the seniors have a graduation and walk on the field? That would be my preference. There are several superintendents in the county that are meeting with the Department of Public Health and the Los Angeles County Office of Education to make that happen. And from my understanding, the conversation about drive-through for superintendents, and all of us have said the same thing, is no, we need to have some type of graduation, whether walking on the field, whether it be a graduation where we break up the class into a certain number of groups and each group comes at a certain time, that we're trying to work through with the Department of Public Health and Los Angeles County Office of Education. Yes, the presentation will be available tomorrow through the district website. Will those touchless water fountains be provided for child development classes as well? My understanding, they've been placed at all the school sites. They've replaced the old type of drinking fountains, or if not, they got most of them. And if we need some more, we'll go through the process of adding additional ones. Can children eat inside and teachers just open the door for ventilation? According to the Department of Public Health, they prefer the students eat outside. Inside a classroom would be the second thing that would be acceptable to them. And I'll mention doors open, windows open, as much ventilation as possible. Here's a question. Are students going to be expected to wear uniforms when they return? To be honest, I don't think that's been a topic of conversation or focus. We will discuss that with the principals, Dr. Kennard, and we will provide a response to that. Please make the graduation happen. We are working hard on it, and as soon as I get an answer, I'll let your principal know at the high school and send out a message. But a lot of school districts are looking at doing some type of graduation, once again, on their field, but just breaking up the classes, the class into groups. Questions again about social distancing with students, how are we going to ensure it? You know, it's a process. I'm going to be honest with everyone here online. It's going to take routine, staff, everyone reminding students about the social distancing. I think being through distance learning, a lot of conversations, they've seen about keeping distances. I think that's going to be a plus, bringing students back to school. And it's just going to be everyone as adults modeling that behavior, that expectation, and reminding students. It's not a, hey, I got you, you're not 6 feet apart. It's just a constant reminder. Just treating all our children here with respect and understanding that coming back to school is different than they're used to, and just constantly encouraging and reminding them about the protocols. Are there any after-school programs, after school like baseball? We have started conditioning for our sports at the high school. I think there's some information on the school site's website. The Department of Public Health has started to lessen the restrictions on sports. They've allowed for some competition already, with no more than 2 teams competing with each other, specifically in the areas of cross country, track and field, and a few other ones. So those sports actually have been okay to start. Conditioning and even some practicing has been allowed now by the Department of Public Health. CIF has sent out some suggestions on how that works, even with mild contact and more moderate contact sports, even football. So for those of you that are online here wanting to know about your high school with sports, I encourage you to reach out to the school site for more information. They've developed several schedules. Question about whether or not the playground is going to be open. At this time, we're not allowed to open up the playground where kids have the slides and all that because we really can't control and wipe it down the number of kids that would be out there. Questions about campus monitors. That's a discussion we've had with principals. And they've really told us the importance of having them there to help with monitoring students, to help maintain the social distancing, reminding kids. So the plan is to bring them back working with the school site. That's all the questions I see we can answer right now. So what I'm going to do also, as reading some of these questions, I am going to open up a email and we'll post it on our website if people have additional questions where they can email those questions to, and we can provide them the responses, as well as adding it to our frequently asked questions. I just want to take a minute here before we conclude and just thank you everyone for the time you took on logging on here. On behalf of the Board of Education, myself, and the staff, we really do look forward to seeing the children of the community of the school district come back to school, come back to the classroom. But we want to ensure that when they do, all the classrooms are prepared and safe for them to return, as well as our staff. So thank you very much again, everyone, and have a good evening. Thank you.
And Dr. Alvarez, I just wanted to share, we have